The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone, you should be able to hear me now. So this is Juha Kiviniemi from Verke Finland speaking, and we will start in a few minutes. Just so you know, we are recording this session. You are all purposefully muted at the moment, but if you do want at any point to ask a question by using your microphone, if you have one, just raise your hand on the control panel and I will give you audio access then. So just hold on for a couple of minutes more and we shall begin. All right, welcome everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Well, if there is a problem with my audio for some reason, please let me know in the chat below. Very nice to have all 30 of you here today in this very first series of webinars in the Connecting the Dots Symposium. So my name is Juha Kiviniemi and I come from Finland, and today I will mostly be talking about young people and digitalization and also digital youth work, which is my frame of reference. Other experts in these webinars, in case you are attending all of them, will be more experts on the social inclusion part. I admit freely that this is not one of my main topics of expertise, but this is more to give you a primer on the whole topic of digitalization in general and what it means for young people. I do have a couple of polls prepared for you, and I also have included, you should see handouts in somewhere in the control panel, and I have included a couple of things. You have my presentation there, which you will of course see also during this presentation. I have also included a recent book on digital youth work, which you can freely download and use however you like. And I also have included something from our government think tank called Citra. Ines is asking or telling that she is muted by organizers, and this is currently on purpose. So I have muted everyone by default, so we don't strain too much the network connections if there might be some people that don't have very good connections to this platform. And if you do raise your hand, so there is a button, someone said it looks like Bart Simpson, should be a button that looks like a hand. And if you raise your hand, then I will see it and I can give you audio access in case you want to ask a question by audio. You can also use the questions button. I will reply to them either by audio or by writing, and you can also write in the common chat if you have any observations. All right, but then we shall get on with it because the time is indeed limited on this one. So we will conclude in 1 hour. Just very briefly about our organization. The organization I work for is called Verke, and we are the Finnish National Center for Expertise on Digital Youth Work. And this means that we have been appointed and we are funded by the Ministry of Education and Culture. And our task is to develop digital youth work on a national level in Finland. And this also means that our main task is to train youth workers on all topics related to digital youth work and digitalization and what it means to the youth work field and young people in general. And we have, as you can see in the picture, probably we have 6 full-time employees. Right now we are also recruiting a 7th person, so our team will expand a little bit in the following few weeks or months. And what we do, our goals are that we try to have knowledge and competencies on digital media and technology increase within youth work, but also the competencies don't matter if the structures don't support the use of digital media. And this, we hope, will also lead into having more innovative services and concepts being created in the field of youth work. And you can read more about our activities and our views either in the book I have added in the handouts, or you can also check on our activities online. We have a blog there also in English, which has some stuff on digitalization and digital youth work. And for me, I've been working in youth work for already quite a while. For some reason, I have sort of attached myself into this digital field early on. So I've been working with a lot of youth participation and e-participation projects. I have also worked with media education projects, and somehow all this digital stuff has been with me all the time. And that's probably how I became to work in Verke. So I worked in Verke for a little over a year now. And what I actually do in terms of my job is mainly having this kind of focus on maker technology. So I try to promote especially technology education in youth work, and also I do a lot of international projects. So that's originally what I was hired in. And this is something that's very much in the core of how we think about digital youth work in my organization, and also me personally. So this is from the second European Youth Work Declaration, and it says that there is clearly a role for online youth work practice. You can see in this that in 2015, digital youth work was very much seen through online youth work. But of course, digital technology is much more than only online tools. And the main things, the practice implications, as you can see, are in new competencies. You can't, even if the competencies for youth work haven't changed, there are also new competencies that you need in order to implement digital youth work in a successful way. And this is also one of my favorite quotes that I often use in my presentations. We often bump into the fact that people are asking, does everyone have to do digital youth work? But we would argue that yes, everyone has to, because young people are already so much within this realm of digital tools and digital approaches that their life is often predominantly digital already. So if youth work doesn't adapt as a field to this reality, then it might be that we really do become irrelevant to all the young people that actually use our services. Right now, I would just like to fill out a tiny poll. So I would ask you how familiar you actually are with the topic of digitalization in general, just so I know a little bit who I'm speaking to. So you should see the poll in your screens now. While you are answering the poll, I will also answer one question here. Someone is saying that the Scottish quote is great, but doesn't it sound like young people are just consumers? This is a very important point. Young people, of course, shouldn't be consumers of either digital media or digital technology, and they also shouldn't be consumers only of youth work services. They should be included in the whole process of designing and implementing these services. This is very much true. And in terms of media education, the digital youth work field is very much trying to push that young people shouldn't only be consumers, but rather they should be the owners of media and also contribute to creating new media and not just consume it. A very, very good point and very good question. So 50% of people are saying that they are quite familiar with digitalization, and some even consider themselves an expert on the topic. And most know at least something. Some people are also saying that they don't know that much, but hopefully after this, you will also learn a little bit more, or at least hopefully I can have you interested to find out more. So welcome to each and every one again, even or irregardless of your expertise level. So moving on, some people probably know this. This is one of my favorite authors, aka Terry Pratchett's, and there's a quote: "To change the fate of one individual is to change the world." And why I also use this quote is that often we talk about how effective youth work in general actually is, and this also applies to digital youth work services. And I believe personally that if we build the sort of services that one young person can feel more included into society or more happy about their own lives, then this can actually have a huge impact, at least for that one individual. Then I move on into digitalization in general. What we talk about a lot in our trainings is we try to illustrate how fast technology is actually growing and developing, And this is one way to look at it. A service is often seen popular when it reaches 50 million users. This is one way of looking at it. And originally for the radio, it took 38 years to have this level of engagement, that there were 50 million users, so it was really considered widespread. When we go on to the TV, it was only 13 years, so much faster at this point. Then when we move into the internet, it reached a milestone of 50 million users in only 4 years, so that's considerably less already. I'm sure you can see a trend here. For Facebook, it only took 2 years for 50 million people to actually adopt this service. For Snapchat, it took only 7 months. And here the young peoples were really the fast adopters here. And the trend continues. For Pokemon Go, once they launched it, it took 19 days only to reach this milestone. So it's incredibly fast. And here you can see, I don't know how well you see this on your screens, but you can see some of the important inventions that affect our lives now. And the printing press, the telescope, they had several hundred years in between. But now when we look at the recent inventions like YouTube, hybrid cars, driverless cars now, it's only a few years in between. So the rate of the growth of technology is only accelerating, and currently there is no end in sight for that, but rather the theory is that it will only accelerate now. And when we talk about digitalization, we of course have to always talk about societies in general, or society. And it changes a lot of things, as I'm sure you all know. We don't live in the same kind of society that we did, for example, before the internet became widespread. It's been rightly called the next industrial revolution, and we can only theorize at this point what the next big thing will be that will fundamentally change society again. One thing that is changing a lot is how the work life changes, and this of course affects the future of young people especially hard. This is a picture of a warehouse in Finland, and the point here is that this particular warehouse is manned by only robots, and this is because they can keep the warehouse an almost oxygen-free space, which of course means that there can't be any fires. But it also means that humans can't work in this warehouse. So the warehouse guy probably or potentially lost his job. But then again, someone that has to innovate this kind of things, and some people that have to program the robots, some people have to build the robots, they will have a job in the future. So even if some jobs are disappearing, new jobs are also emerging. And this is, of course, a huge challenge for both young people personally and also for the education sector in general. So how does the education sector really make sure that they are giving young people the right kind of skills that they can use in work life in the future, especially when it's really hard to predict what kind of work life there will actually be in the future. This is another cool example. There was an initiative called Science for Change in Kosovo. So young people wanted to raise the issue of very bad air quality in Kosovo. So there was an initiative where young people built these devices that you can see in their hands in this picture, and with these devices they could measure how the air quality actually is in different parts of Kosovo. And They collected this data and they gave this data to government officials and said, hey, look, we now have proof that the air quality is really bad, so you actually have to do something about it. And they actually took measures after this initiative. So in this sense, or in this example, what young people did and the issues they wanted to raise up using digital technology had a huge impact on how society actually worked and how the government actually had to work there. There are several medical applications now for technology. This means that even the healthcare system is transforming. There are supercomputers even now that can actually predict very accurately different diseases, different kinds of help that a patient might need. And they are currently already, they are sometimes more efficient and more accurate than a human being. So this also means something for future society. What kind of skills do young people need to have if they want to work in the medical field in the future? They are not the same kind of skills that they need now. One huge thing is, of course, communication, and this affects us as well. If you all think of how you communicate in your daily life with your own social circles, how you communicate when you work, how you communicate with relatives. It happens a lot in different platforms, in different tools, and this is especially true for young people. So this is something to take into account also when we think of how we work with those young people, because they are used to communicating with multiple tools, so they expect the same thing from us. It's some of you probably have tried at one point to send emails to young people and wondered, I'm not really reaching anyone. I wonder why. Because the way we communicate, we choose one efficient platform and we use that for communication. But young people get their information and communicate in a very different way from us. It's also true regarding also the question about consumers versus content producers. It's really much real time now. Of course, not all content is produced real time, but a lot of the content is. So the rate of how we need to also in the youth work field, how we need to produce content, it should be much faster than previously. We can't make or of course we can, but we shouldn't make a high quality video production every time we want to tell something of our activities, but rather we should, or young people expect us to produce that content almost in real time, sometimes even in real time with live streaming, etc. And this, of course, gives us huge challenges on how to produce that content, how to present ourselves within this content, but also it means that our activities can be much more accessible when we actually also have the facilities to produce content in real time from our activities. So this gives the opportunity of many more young people to also join or participate in our activities somehow. This is something that affects a lot how we communicate with young people. Young people's communication has moved into what we call dark social networks. This doesn't mean the Tor network or anything bad in general, but dark social in this way means that their communication is more moving into platforms that are only visible to a closed group of young people. For example, many young people communicate on Snapchat now. It means that they communicate, at least mostly, only with their circle of friends. And there is no way for us to tap into that stream of communication unless we are invited to that communication. So it's very different from previous social media platforms in the sense that that it isn't as open anymore. And it's been said that our generation, I was born in 1980, is one of the last ones to share a lot about their life so openly. And even my generation is already many people are putting on the brakes due to recent events on how, for example, Facebook as a platform is viewed. But young people are doing it even more, so their communication has really gone into these networks that we can't really tap. But the dynamic is, of course, still there. The dynamic of how young people communicate in these groups, and this is what we educators and adults should also address. This can be, of course, very inclusive, but this can be also a form of exclusion, because even from a technical point of view, it's very easy for a young person to get excluded from these circles. But I'll get to that later. But it's not all bad. Also, all the digital tools and social media give a possibility of young people building very much stronger connections with each other. And it can be also on a global scale. So it's not only about who you see in your daily life, it can be also who you interact with online in your daily life. So this is really also a good possibility here. There's a question, let's see. Yeah, dark social does sound pretty horrible. Yeah, this is not the best term, but it's called dark in the sense that it's hidden, because it is hidden from the outside world, and there is a negative side also to this, but it's not only negative. And of course, that's young people's prerogative. They are in no way required to interact in an environment where we can reach them. Rather, uh, we should try to sort of develop a good communication culture, even if we are not part of those networks. But to summarize a little bit, digitalization is really not something that is going to happen. It has already changed a lot of how our societies work. One thing is that the ownership of information has already changed, and it can't be really changed back. This means that everyone is now able to produce the same kind of content, the same content on same kind of platforms that, let's say, official media is producing the content. So it also puts up a lot of challenges for young people. I've heard often that young people's media skills aren't as good as the previous generations. While this might be true to an extent, it's also a matter of the media field getting much more complicated. For my generation and generations before, it was easy to spot when something came from an official source. You could see the logo of a newspaper, uh, official newspaper in 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 the heading. You could see that okay, this is a news broadcast from our national TV channel. While there, of course, there can be political motivations behind them as well. So it's not, you shouldn't take even them for granted to be the absolute neutral truth. But it was still easier to spot. Now anyone can produce the same kind of information on the same level, so it's much harder to spot what is actually reliable information and not. And we all know that fake news is a huge issue in whole Europe right now. But also there is a positive side, of course, so that young people can actually produce the same kind of information and the same kind of media content about the topics that are relevant to them. So in a sense, this lack of total control is also a good thing in terms of equality, in terms of youth participation and youth social inclusion of young people. this one I already touched upon. So the young people's methods of communication are very different from ours. Of course, for some of us, we also multitask in many platforms, but the communication often isn't as intense as it was. And of course, there is a possibility that you will get excluded from your social circles also in real life. But in when we talk about digital environments, it can be even more profound. And of course, there can be a few hindrances to why you actually can't participate in this kind of method of communication. Maybe you don't have the skills, maybe you don't have the technology, and then you will get excluded from this mode of social communication altogether. And this can be a really huge problem for some young people. We tend to think, even in Finland, we tend to think that, okay, everyone has a smartphone, but this is actually not the case. There are young people that do not have access to these devices. Maybe they don't have all the time access to networks, so they're at least partially excluded from the social communication of their peers. But this is also one very good point to consider, that young people don't go online. We still probably go online. We have this separation of our online lives and our offline or in real life lives. But I remember an interview of a young person. I think they were 14, 15 or something like this. And the reporter was asking them, how is your online life? And he replied sarcastically with, what do you mean online life? Because this is all life. And this very much summarizes how young people, or at least most young people, see all the digital tools, all the digital environments they interact in. And for them, this is not something separate, but rather this is a natural part of their way of being social with their peers, their natural way of obtaining information, their natural way of actually living. And this is a very good thing to keep in mind. This is from a colleague in Austria, Anu Pöyske. And she talks a lot about how digital skills are actually digital life skills. So they are not separate also from they are not only limited to the digital world, but rather they are actually skills that you need in life in order to succeed, and even in order to live nowadays. Digital skills can also be seen as citizenship skills. We talk a lot about in youth work how we try to foster active citizenship. But if young people don't have the skills they need in order to get the relevant information about their environment, about their society, if they don't have the necessary skills to produce the kind of content they need, then they most likely will not have the skills to be active citizens in the future also. And this is, of course, a huge challenge for the youth work field. Anu also talks a lot about how understanding technology means understanding media. And this is also about media education. This is about technology education. Excuse me. And this means that not only understanding media content is enough, but rather young people should also be empowered to understand how the technology behind the media works. So, for example, if we talk about commercial messages online, young people should be given the tools and the skills to understand how those commercial messages are actually uh, came to them. Someone is asking about the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is already shared in the handouts, so it should be already available to you, but we can also email them afterwards. But why it's so important to understand media, it's also about understanding the world, because media is very much a part of the society we live in. It is a huge influence on everything. It is a huge factor in how societies actually work and how the world is viewed. And understanding media also means understanding yourself in the way that young people should reflect on what their relationship is to media and all the content that is presented in that media. And media here, of course, means online media, it means television, it means billboards on walls, it means written messages, it means pretty much all types of media. Someone is asking about the handouts. Unfortunately, I can't see the panel myself, so we will be sure to send you a link afterwards to all the presentations if the handouts aren't visible. Unfortunately, I don't have the same control panel as you, so I'm unable to check. Apologies. So moving on, this is also from oh, I misspelled Anu's name, or apparently my spell checker wanted to spell it, so Anu is her name actually. And this, you have all heard the term digital natives. And this relates to the idea that young people, just because they have grown up in this environment of digital media, and digital tools, that they already know everything about them, so they can swim fluently in this digital world. And this really isn't the case. Um, and 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 Anu talks or has said in one seminar that I was hosting that the idea that young people would automatically know everything about digital media is just as ridiculous as we would be sleeping in a library and suddenly know all the information in the world. It just doesn't work that way. It requires a lot of reflection, it requires a lot of hard work, and it requires a lot of learning. From the viewpoint of youth work, it should always be learning by doing, but also, of course, formal education has a huge role in this as well. And this is, of course, the question in terms of our our seminar topic. What does all this development of digitalization? What does this mean for inclusion? Can digital technology contribute to inclusion? Sure, it can have a lot of positive effects. It can give access to information. It can give access to information to people that wouldn't have it otherwise. Maybe they have certain limitations, certain physical limitations, for example, that digital technology can help bridge. Maybe there is a locational limitation. Some people live somewhere where they can't access, let's say, the city center where all the information is on display. So digital technology can, of course, also bridge this gap. If a young person lives somewhere that there aren't that many young people, they can maybe start building those social contacts within digital environments, and in this way they can also be included in a social group of their peers, even if they don't meet face to face. Of course, there's the other side of exclusion. When so much things are now in a digital environment and in a digital mode, what if you don't have the technology to actually access this information? What if you do not have the the if you don't have the skills to actually have this or use this information? What if you can't? What if you don't have the skills, even if you would say that, okay, you are a young person that can voice their opinion really well. But if the main, let's say for youth participation, if the main avenues of participation provided are the ones that are online, it requires a different kind of skill sets to actually be able to contribute on those platforms. And also in terms of social communication, if it's all online, then what if you can't access it? Then you will be sort of automatically excluded from those environments. So a quick poll again. What do you think? Mainly, is digitalization mostly a threat, or can it enable even more inclusion? What do you think? I know this question is a bit unfair because it can be both, and it usually probably is both. But if you would have to choose, which would it mainly be? Okay, about 3/4 of you have voted now, and 80% seem to think that mostly digitalization can enable more inclusion and more participation. Mm, sure, I could have added an option of having it be both. Someone is asking about hashtag where you can share impressions on social media, and I would suggest use the hashtag connecting the dots. This should work, and it should also be in your info mail, if I'm not mistaken, which I of course might also be. But I want to talk a little bit about also problems. We often have the impression that thanks, David. So CTD 2018 is the correct hashtag. CTD 2018. Thanks, David. My bad. As we talk about digitalization, we also need to take into account the digital divide. So I've talked a little bit about this already, that the digital divide can come from lack of access to technology, the lack of skills to use that technology, lack of understanding how technology actually works, or also the control of information, which can affect very much or very much can affect how we actually access information. We have a comment or a question from Anna. You should be unmuted now. Hello, Anna. Did you have a question? Okay, moving on. Apparently, either not a question or it moved. Sorry, mistake. No worries. It's fine. I would ask you again in a little poll. These aren't, of course, the only threats to digitalization or inclusion within digitalization, but what, in your opinion, from these four would be the biggest threat to inclusion? You should see the poll again now. Thank you, Mark, also for the hashtag. Okay, most of you have voted, and this is actually pretty even. 25% thinks that the biggest threat is access to technology. 22% thinks that it is access to information. 27% thinks it's understanding technology, and 27% again thinks it's skills to use that technology. And these are all, of course, challenges that youth work can also, and educators in general, can also address in a way. So youth work often gives young people access to technology that they wouldn't otherwise have. And in many cases, uh, uh, we also give young people access, we give them skills to also use that technology. So we learn, have them learn with us and also learn ourselves with them how the technology actually works. And the technology uh, behind the media is often learned also by just creating media content, creating digital content in general. And of course, there is also this access to information and participation. Youth work has a long time tradition also of giving young people avenues where to actually participate in producing that information. And it's only becoming stronger even now. So how youth work can adapt, these are a few ways of looking at how digitality and digitalization is seen in youth work. We talk about digital youth work, which is the what youth workers actually do with digital tools with young people. We talk about digital services. So, for example, this could be an e-participation platform, or this could be a place where young people can see what is happening in youth work, and this is something that we provide for young people. Then there is of course there are the digital solutions, and this means the actual software services that we use. Let's say we have some kind of collaborative system that we as professionals work with. And there is, of course, the digital infrastructure, which is very important. We can't do any of this without proper digital equipment, without the devices in hand. Um, just a little bit about digital youth work still. It means basically just using or addressing digital media and technology in youth work. How we see digital youth work is that it's not a separate method, but rather it should be included in any youth work setting, as well as the viewpoint of inclusion should be present in any youth work activity. But the basic definition is very simple, just using or addressing digital media. And the addressing part is interesting in a way because digital youth work can also happen without any single digital device present in the room. So we could only have a group discussion with young people on how they use digital media. And in this way, the youth workers will already be doing digital youth work. And this is how the recent European expert group divided or framed digital youth work. So it can be seen as an activity. So you could use, let's say, an app for making a GPS-based adventure outside. It could be used as a tool when you use, let's say, you use a WhatsApp group in communicating with your group of young people. This would be using digital tools. And it could be also seen as the content, which would be the example I mentioned before about addressing digital media on youth work. And on the right side, you can see a little bit of how the expert group viewed what youth workers need. They need digital skills. Obviously, they need some skills in order to really do this kind of work. They need the organizational support. from whatever organization they work in, and they also need an agile mindset. And this mostly relates to how I started with how technology is advancing in a very rapid way. So it's changing a lot. For example, in Finland, when the service Periscope came out, it was suddenly it was on all young people's phones. Everyone was, or at least seemingly everyone was using it. And while youth work actually scrambled to react, how should we relate ourselves to this app that gives anyone the free reign of producing live video, young people already started abandoning it. So this was pretty much, I would say, a 3.5 week cycle from early adopters into most young people already leaving the platform. So this requires really, we have to be quick on our feet to actually react to these things. But whatever you do, this is one of the most important things that always digital youth work should be based on the youth work values and the youth work goals. It isn't about technology. It's about what kind of tools young people can have to express themselves and be creative and give them the access to everything that's in the society around them. Because the problem is that if we build stuff technology first, I don't know who of you heard of Boaty McBoatface. So the UK had a campaign on naming this 300 million research vessel, and eventually the vote came out as Boaty McBoatface because actually no one cares what a research vessel is named. If the people don't have a personal stake, if they don't care, then crowdsourcing will produce this kind of results. And it's true also about youth participation. If the topic you're trying to have young people participate in, if it doesn't matter to them, if it's not relevant, if it's only there for the sake of the technology, which could, in this instance, be youth e-participation, then you will get results like Boaty McBoatface here. Luckily, there are some frameworks already in place. I mentioned already the expert group on youth and digitalization, which concluded their work late last year. And also there are recent conclusions on smart youth work from the Council of Europe, which are very high-level papers, and this also gives us practitioners in the field and people that are drafting up local policies a lot of sort of support on how to actually build up these issues. But what's very common still in digital youth work is, I mentioned, does everyone have to do this? Should there be a separate focus or not? And also what was mentioned already in this declaration from 2015 was that digital environments require a new set of competencies and a new consideration of professional ethics. How do we work with young people in online environments or using digital tools? Now we talk a lot about GDPR. We talk about what kind of data we actually gather from young people and whether this is okay and how the data is stored. I have a error here. So the conclusions are from the Council of the EU. Yeah. A few examples of digital youth work. I'll go to the practical examples immediately. For example, in Denmark, there is a peer-to-peer online question service run by an NGO. And the cool thing about that is they have a lot of young volunteers answering those questions. So it's not only the trained professionals, but rather lots of peers are answering questions of young people. In Finland, there are examples of esports teams. I know this is being done elsewhere as well in Europe. So they are using electronic sports as a fun sort of tool for group work. So the main thing is not to make them as successful as possible, but it's a tool to give them skills how to function in a group of young people. Um, Ireland had a pretty cool example where young people could do a video online and ask a politician basically anything, and the politicians also answered by video. I heard of this example very early on when it was still in development. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to it afterwards, but it's a really cool idea how to have politicians engage with young people. Now, vlogs are being adopted by youth workers as well. This is one priest from Espoo. I have been trying to make him enable subtitles so I could actually show his videos, uh, but unfortunately they don't have English subtitles as of yet. But if they do, I will share these videos also. You can use youth work has been a lot about telling stories, creativity, and Dig It Up has, which is a training course within Erasmus Plus. They have this idea of using Instagram as a storytelling platform. And if you search for hashtag Brian T. Onion in Instagram, you should get these stories and examples of how they use it as a platform. This is from a gaming environment. A local parish in Finland runs a Minecraft server, and this is a church that young people build within this server, and they have masses there. They have activities for young people. They also use it for having dads and their sons come together into this environment and play together if they are having social issues. We have this is one of ours from Verke. We have been running this podcast called Somecast for a couple of years now, and now we also have digital youth work sessions, which is in English, where I actually do one-on-one sessions with digital or technology experts and other people around Europe. So if you're interested, give it a listen also. It can be found on our website. And this is one platform, the last example, where young people can raise issues relevant to their environment in this lowmap. Lowmap.be is the address, and this is cool because this is all open source. You could take this platform now and use it in your own environment and just start having young people raise their voice on different topics. I will gloss over now of this strategic development because I'm running out of time, but I will say one more thing before I open the floor for a few questions. We have done several international projects now. What's coming up next is, of course, this symposium. We are coming up with a book on smart youth work / digital youth work this year, or possibly early next year, but around the end of the year anyway. We are also coming up with a book on technology education within youth work. So this will be also one interesting thing. We have a strategic partnership project that is running now with 5 different partners. YouthLink Scotland is the lead in this one. And we will be publishing websites. The address is going to be digitalyouthwork.eu. And we will publish training materials and good examples of how to train these topics to youth workers. So if some of you work in a position where you work with young people, where you train youth workers, this might be a good resource for you. And also there is a study visit coming up to Finland that you can find in Salto Youth. And I think the registration is still open. So if you do want to come to Finland to see how digital youth work is implemented here, then please apply to that study visit. And this is the book that I included in the handouts, and you can also order a printed copy on our website, and we will also try to get copies in Tallinn, so we would have a box of these here available for free. And this is me. There is a question now. There is a comment from Mara. Mara, I will give you the floor last, but does anyone else have any questions at this point? Or comments, even. Just click the button where you can raise your hand and I will give you audio access if you want. No? All right, then I will thank you at this point, and I wish I hope that you will also be able to attend the other webinars. Now I will give the floor to Mara from the partnership, and she has a comment for you all. But from my side, thank you very much, and please do contact me if you need anything further. So Mara should be unmuted now. Go ahead, Mara.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear at least.
Okay. I am Mara from the partnership between the Council of Europe and the European Commission in the field of youth. And I would just like to say thank you to everyone who attended this webinar in view of our symposium on digitalization, young people and social inclusion, connecting the dots. I would also like to thank to Juha for the very interesting introduction to digitalization. I really hope this put you all in a mindset to explore these issues, and also thank you for the examples you gave from your own work with Verke, and particularly in Finland. Just to say, we are all very excited and still in the middle of preparations for the symposium we will be organizing in and even though perhaps some of you will not be able to make it in person to the symposium, we'll make sure that we will also be present digitally, and so we can still share the results and the outcomes with all of you. And I really invite you also to join our next webinars, so that you can learn a bit more about these topics and also start exploring them more. So on behalf of the organizers, so mainly the partnership between the European Commission and the Council of Europe, I really want to say thank you for attending this. I hope it was interesting. For me personally, it was very interesting, and looking forward to the next webinars. And thanks, Juha, as well.
Yes, thank you, everyone. This was it for today, and we will continue. We will continue tomorrow with the next webinar. Like I said, I hope many of you will be able to attend that one as well. But that is all for today. Thank you for joining us, and tomorrow we continue with advantages and risks of digitalization to social inclusion. Thank you.